The Disabled Rebels Network. She's a boss. So Mary Ellen, give her a cheer. This is Disabled Rebels.
Yeah. Okay.
How did you get involved, Mary Ellen? How did you get involved with XR?
Hello, everyone. Robin's just asked me, how did I get involved? I got involved because I love my planet, because I love the children of this planet, not just the human children, the children of every creature. I got involved because I'm an auntie. I've got 2 adopted grandchildren as well. And it absolutely terrifies me that they aren't going to get a future. That they get a future that is destroyed, deforested, contaminated, polluted. Where they get a future of food insecurity, of polluted air, of polluted water, of social collapse. And it breaks my heart. And that's why I got involved. I came along to the first Extinction Rebellion protests in London. I came along with our choir, Shakti Singh's choir, and we sang. I don't know if you saw us, we were all dressed in red. And we sang again while the people who were being arrested were being arrested. And it broke my heart again, and it's breaking again and again and again. And as a disabled person, I'm acutely aware that every crisis, including the climate crisis, every single crisis is created and used by the same people. And every single crisis hits disabled people first and hardest. Families with disabled children, families with disabled elderly people. Disabled people are not just hit first and hardest, they're also considered last. They're the last ones to be prepared for. When this government did its daily COVID briefings, there was no BSL interpretation. We had to actually push and bully and pressure them into finally giving in and having BSL interpretation. It just shows this government's attitude to disabled people. We don't matter. Our lives don't matter. It's not even that we don't matter. They're actively killing us off. I belong to a group called DPAC, Disabled People Against Cuts. DPAC was formed in 2010 when this government came to power and started their cuts and austerity. And DPAC said, cuts kill, austerity kills, people will die. We were told that we were just scaremongering. So in 2011, under a Freedom of Information request, the government was asked, so tell us, you say nobody's dying, we say they are. How many people are actually dead because of your cuts? For the purpose of the Freedom of Information request, they were given a time period of 6 weeks. They were told, tell us, within 6 weeks of disabled people's benefits being taken from them and being told that they were fit for work, how many people were dead? And they gave us the figures for 2011. Not even the whole of the year, just part of the year, 10 months of the year. Does anyone want to hazard a guess of how many people, disabled people, the government actually admitted had died that year from their cuts? Does anyone want to hazard a guess? The figure was 10,600. 10,600 disabled people dead within the year, all left to die without the benefits that they needed to survive. There were people dying anyway, but their last 6 weeks was left with no money, having to fight for their lives. There were people whose conditions got worse because they couldn't cope without enough food, without housing, without the support they needed, with having to fight and use every bit of their energy to fight for their lives. There were people who committed suicide because they could cope no more. Every single one of them murdered, literally murdered by this government, because when you do something that you know will result in somebody's death, and you still do it when you are told, you do this, people will die. That is murder. Nothing short of murder. That was that year. Since then, every year, we've had tens of thousands of disabled people die. By the time COVID hit this country, there was 250,000 disabled people dead. 250,000. When one extra death is unacceptable, how were we able to have 250,000 disabled people dead in plain sight without our government acknowledgement of it, without the media saying a word about it? They said, if anything, they said tiny bits, but mostly they didn't make any news. Majority of people had no idea that disabled people were being murdered, that cuts killed, that austerity kills, that this government was deliberately choosing to push people into early graves. And then COVID came along. And that was a huge boon to this government's depopulation agenda, because now they could depopulate not just the disabled people, but anyone and everyone else too. But particularly those they see as useless eaters, those they see as scroungers and takers, and portray as benefits scum, people that don't deserve to live. They use rhetoric of the deserving poor and the undeserving poor. They say that they're making sure the benefits go to those most in need. Well, what about the rest of the people who are in need? By the time COVID came along and gave them an excuse, they started to use it. And the ONS reported that 6 in 10 of the COVID deaths in this country, in England, are disabled people. That's 60% of the COVID deaths, when we only make up 20 to 25%, depending on which measure you use. That inordinate number of disabled people's deaths is proof positive that this government is making sure that disabled people die in huge numbers. They now say no lateral flow tests, no need for masks, no need for any COVID protections. Our doctors and nurses are not just here protecting us from the climate, they're protecting us inside our hospitals and inside the GP surgeries, and yet they are not being given lateral flow tests to protect themselves and their patients. When a doctor can't do a lateral flow test to check whether someone has COVID, how do they treat them when they're not given the tools to do what they need to do? Just as we aren't being given the tools to do what we need to do to protect the planet. But it's not just disabled people, it's every single person and every single creature on this planet, every blade of grass on this planet that is under threat. And instead of doing something about it, instead of responding to that climate crisis and acting upon it, the climate crisis they have declared under pressure from this wonderful group of people that are Extinction Rebellion, they've declared it, but what are they doing? They're investing in new oil, new coal, new nuclear. They're continuing to pollute and contaminate. They're using the fuel hikes and the cost of living crisis as an excuse to keep pushing their agenda. And that's why we need to keep doing what we are doing. And that's why I'm so proud to be part of Extinction Rebellion, part of XR Disabled Rebels, part of Deepak, part of you. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you. I forgot one last thing. I don't know if you know, but Angus Rose, Uncle on Hunger Strike, is now on day 32 of his hunger strike outside Parliament. He is demanding that this government gets a brief from the UK climate chief, Sir Patrick Vallance, about the climate crisis. What are the risks? What are the solutions? What do we need to do? Just as we had COVID briefings, we now need climate briefings. Can you all please support Uncle on Hunger Strike? It's hashtag Uncle on Hunger Strike. He's outside Parliament every day. I don't want him to die. He's my friend. I am absolutely petrified for his life, for the lives of everyone on here, and the lives of future generations. So please stand with Uncle on Hunger Strike and pressure this government. Thank you.